Without understanding, I mentioned Lazarus and rich man, giving you just a information that coming is something which would be this week. I didn't realize that, but that's what it was. It was like a trailer for a movie. This particular lesson that God gives to us through the church is a warning, I believe. At the same time, it's instruction on how to live out our life, but it also shows us the consequences of not listening to God and not following the pattern of God that He's given to us. We have been blessed with everything. We lack nothing. We lack nothing. There is nothing to come. We already have been given everything. It has not been manifested in us yet. We have to practice it. We have to use it before it becomes a reality to our lives. Much like a child, when the child is born, the child is very helpless to take care of himself. But he still has everything he needs to do it. He lacks in nothing. The only thing is he has to learn how to use what he's got. Sometimes we wish they wouldn't learn so much. And when they get to a certain age and they're able to move around and do all kinds of things, they get into these things and that things, and they clean out the cupboards and all the things which we don't want them to do because they haven't learned yet how to use effectively and righteously what they have been given. The same thing with us as God's children. We have been given much. The story about the rich man and Lazarus is the rich man. He has everything. And if you'll notice the symbolic image that's given to us here, he is wearing purple and linen. This is not only the dress of the wealthy, this is the dress of the priesthood, the high priest. So he's showing to us, speaking to us about, even though we may have reached a level wherein we are considered righteous, we still have obligations and responsibilities to fulfill. These things are not basically only for our benefit. The rich man was extremely wealthy. And it says here that he enjoyed daily the splendor of his life. Every day. He didn't just eat rice. He had a layout that was just awesome. It was gaiety. It was like a party. Every day it's a party. Nothing left over from yesterday. Everything is new and everything is different and everything is very special, which means he has to have servants. And one of the things that he then does is that he enforces his own comfort and makes others violate the laws of God. Because according to God, the Sabbath was a day of rest. You were not to do anything on Sabbath, but yet he forced his people to work on Sabbath so that he could have for himself the glamorous, the glorious meals that he wanted. So we see here is one who is abusing his power, his wealth, his position to put others down. And of course we then have the picture of Lazarus, who for some reason has found himself in a very difficult place in life. It doesn't tell us what's happened to him, but he has lost everything. Not only has he lost everything, but perhaps his losing of it brought upon him many physical problems. Because when we have emotional problems, it also comes out physically in many different areas. He was in bad shape, sores. And it tells us that he had been taken to the gate of the wealthy man, the rich man. And what he was desiring, and it says he was desiring the crumbs from the table. He was longing for the crumbs. It doesn't say he was being given. We normally think he was given, and he possibly did get some, but he was longing for them. It was his desire, just give me something to eat, just the crumbs from the table. As I was reading about this, it says that in the habit of that day was for the wealthy people. They did not have fork and spoon like Noe's Kamayan. And they would take the bread and they would clean their hands on the bread and throw the bread away. The bread was like a napkin to them. And it was this bread that was thrown away that Lazarus was longing for. He had sores. And the rich man didn't help him take care of his physical problem. He got his comfort from the dogs. It says the dogs were licking his sores. And in many cases, the licking of the sore by an animal like that brings also healing and comfort. But it shows us also the dogs were well fed. They were not looking for something to eat. They were instead ministering when it should have been the rich man that was ministering. So we have this setting before us so that we see two contrasts here. The wealthy, extremely wealthy, not just a little extra, but extreme wealthy, and the extreme poverty, poor. Two different conflicts. And we then see Lazarus dying. It should not surprise us that Lazarus would die in his condition. No food, sores, physical problems. He dies. It does not tell us that he was buried. It does not mention this at all. All that it mentions is that the angels came and took his soul to Abraham. So he probably was just thrown into a hole or just thrown into the weeds, whatever, the body, because he was worthless. Who cared? But the angels came and took his soul and guarded it to make certain that no interference bothered this soul, and brought him to Abraham. He was received by Abraham. We would think, well, why Abraham? Why wasn't he received by Jesus? Jesus wasn't yet. And Abraham was the father of all creation. He was given that title. He was father of all nations. And so the Father received him. Then after Lazarus' death, and notice also, before we go any further, notice the rich man doesn't have a name. He has no identity. He thinks he's wise. He thinks he's big. He thinks he's important. I got all of this. Look at me. You take care of me. But he's not even recognized by being given a name. So he has no identity. He's a nobody. He dies. But it tells us he was buried, which means, more than likely, he had a phenomenal funeral. You can imagine the orchestras, the bands, the mourners, all the other things that would come, and in the wake, everybody telling how great he was, but they couldn't say how well he did with what he had, because he didn't do anything. As you will recognize in all of this, it does not share with us that the rich man did anything that was sinful. He didn't steal. He didn't kill. What was his sin was what he did not do. His sin was what he did not do. The rich man ends up in Hades. Not the country Hades, but hell. He's in torment. The interesting thing here, and I would want to us to understand, this may not be literal. It's symbolic to let us understand the kingdom of God and the things of God. But here was the rich man in hell. He could see the Lazarus with Abraham comforting him, and he'd be taken care of. He's receiving a banquet. He's receiving abundance. He's being blessed. And the rich man can see this. If it isn't enough that the flames of torment would cause pain, how much more pain would come when you see the one who was nobody receiving every good thing while you have nothing? You're hungry. You want water. You have none of this. And yet you see the one who was just a bum on the street laying there, couldn't even take care of himself. Yet he is getting all the blessing. The torment. You see abundance, but you can't have. The rich man cries out to Abraham, "Send Lazarus and let him put a drop of water, only a drop of water on my tongue." You can imagine the change in him all of a sudden, because before he didn't want a drop of water, he wanted a bucket. And it was special water. It was everything had to be very, very special. Probably gold or silver container. And now just send Lazarus with just a drop. Wait. Lazarus was the one you were ignoring. Lazarus was the one you wouldn't take care of. Lazarus was the one lying at your gate, needing, and you would not even recognize him. Doesn't even say anything about him. Now all of a sudden you want that man to come and help you? We see the inequities here. We see the conflicts. When one person recognizes they're wrong, they still demand special attention. Abraham tells the rich man, there's a gulf between us. There's a chasm between us. Nobody can come from there to here, and nobody from here can go there. We can't help him. Here is one who has commanded his whole life, and everything he commands, he gets the best. Now all of a sudden nobody can help him, and he's in torment. But Lazarus is being blessed. He's receiving everything he didn't have before. His sore is no longer, his body is whole, and he is in the arms of Abraham. So there's a real message for us to understand here, that even though we may think we have achieved great things in this life, those things will not go with us to the next life. We can store up all we want and think we are so great and so awesome. We can command and the whole world bows to our needs. But yet at the same time, at the end, it's gone. You don't take the evil and you don't take the good. It's all left behind. At death, someone has said we become equal. Everybody's on the same level. The rich man has enjoyed everything, but now it's common for everybody as they enter into the new life. But it shows us here perhaps a picture of heaven and hell. And it shows us how that what we've done in this life affects what happens to us in the next life. And it shows us that that which we've thought would secure us now will not be our security later. The rich man could have brought comfort to Lazarus, and maybe even could have brought new life to him. He had the ability. He had more than enough. He could have shared it. He didn't. He ignored the poor man. He ignored the poor man, didn't have any concern for him whatsoever. The dogs had more concern than the rich man. But when it came time for the end of their life, notice how God has justified or corrected the injustices. And those who had nothing received much. And those who have had much and have not shared it loses it all and needs more. The rich man then says, okay, if Lazarus can't come and put a drop of water on my tongue, then would you send him to my brother's house and tell my brothers, do this something different so they don't come here? Abraham said to the rich man, they have the prophets. They have all the other men that are sharing the things of God. If they won't listen to those, they will not listen to someone who comes from the dead. Won't pay attention. He said they have their chance. They have their opportunity. It shows us that in the presence of the good, there's torment if you are not the one receiving. And this scripture came to me from Revelation chapter 14. I just take a portion of it just to express what this says to us. It says, he will be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. Now, this is talking about a picture of heaven. And in heaven is perfection. In heaven is all these things. And yet here is one in the presence of holy angels and the presence of the Lord who will suffer. He'll be tormented. This is much like the rich man being able to see Lazarus in the arms of Abraham, enjoying the blessings of God, while he himself is tormented. That torment is even greater because he sees what he needs not being able to reach him. In the presence of holy angels and the Lord, the torment is worse. So it's a picture, it's giving to us a picture of life in itself and how when it ends, how what we've done in life affects what happens to us in the afterlife. It shows us, I believe, if we look at the other two scriptures that we read, it talks about those who have much and have not used it properly will have to account for it one day. Timothy tells us, ignore these things that are put in your face about gaining much for yourself here and now. Set those aside and seek righteousness, seek good deeds, seek things that are profitable for eternity. I shared last week to help those less fortunate, we say we are blessing them. But in our blessing of them, we are blessed, because taking care of them puts into our bank account of heaven a blessing, so that when we arrive, we are given that banquet of great abundance from God. God blesses us for one purpose: to be a blessing. Not so that we can boast in what we have, not so that we can flaunt it in front of others, but instead that we can use what we have to help those in need. There is so much that is held in the hands of a few in this world that all those without would never need to be without. They could all be with everything they need, can be. We look sometimes at the plagues that come, or the diseases that come. If we would use what we have, these things would be no longer. But because we don't use what God has given to us, they haunt us. Several years ago, Bill Gates took some of his money and some of the money of Buffett, and he went to Africa and he gave injections or whatever it was to counteract polio. And now Africa is free from polio. Why? Because of the efforts of two men. Two men who would not give anything to the United Nations or anything to government. They said, there's too much corruption. We will do it ourselves. They did it. How much more if others who are in these categories would reach out to the areas of the world in need, we could see the peace and the hope and the strength coming to mankind, because God has given us the ability. He has given to us the gifts to take care of these things, and He enables us to do it. But we think it's just for me, so that I can have a bigger whatever. You know, I can go to a more expensive university. I can go to a better level, and I can become more important because I graduated from this place. Or I can have a bigger car, or I can have a bigger house, or I can have a bigger ring, whatever. Well, there's a story now out about a 50-carat blue diamond that was stolen from the Saudi prince. They don't know where it is. 50 carats? What would you do with 50 carats? You couldn't even hold it on your finger. You couldn't put it on your neck. It would break your back. But what could it be worth as far as helping others? We look, and in many ways, we envy those who have much. We envy those in Forbes Park. We envy those in the wealthy villages, Corinthian Gardens and others. We envy them. Oh, if only I could be there. If only you could be there. You have more responsibility and more obligation, and you will be tested and tried, judged one day. What did you do with what you were given? Did you think yourself more important? You need an escort when you go through town? You have red lights flashing because you're so important? Everybody else sits for 5 hours in the traffic? It comes to a point of equality. And the thing that we have to learn and understand, that God has prepared those who are to help those who are in need. They're there. It is not for us alone. Doesn't mean God doesn't want us to have anything. Don't misunderstand. But we have that which we need, and beyond that we let others be helped. The rich man found out what happens. The story is given to us as a warning. as instructions, so that we will understand that what we have been given, God intends it to be that which He is to be glorified with. Not us to be glorified, but Him. It tells us in Timothy to flee selfish goals. Seek righteousness, godliness, faith, and love. Fight the good fight of faith. Do good and be rich in good works. Lay hold of that which is life indeed. The story of Mother Teresa, coming from a very wealthy family, having to give up all of her wealth because she chose to go into the convent. But in the convent she was also disappointed because they weren't taking care of the poor. So she leaves the convent. She denies her vow, and she goes into the streets of Calcutta. And she pulls the dead people that are dying on the streets into a warehouse that's empty. And she goes out and begs food. And instead of eating it herself, she feeds it to those who are dying. Her philosophy, I want them to die knowing there's love. And I want them to experience love before they die. She gave her all. She wasn't even allowed when she left the convent. She couldn't take anything with her. Nothing. Only the clothes she was wearing. All of her own belongings, they would not allow her to take. She gave up everything. She gave her life to others. She became well known worldwide. But even in this knowledge, she was humble. She wasn't accepting much for herself. Now, she's a saint. She was a saint before because she was following the principles of God. If she could have taken the wealth of her family, she would have done that, but she would have given it for others. She saw the need, and even though her prosperity was taken from her, she used what she had to help others, even though she had to beg for it. Well known. Can you imagine the annals of heaven when she died? Can you imagine the celebration that would take place? This is the challenge to us. Lay hold of life. The life that God intends us to have. Not the false life, because that life will fade away. It will be gone. Jesus said in Matthew, when some were knocking at the door and wanting Him to open the door, and He said, I don't know who you are. They said, but Jesus, we listened to you in your ministry. We sat with you here. We did this and did that. He said, I don't know who you are. He said, when I was hungry, you did not feed me. When I was hungry, you did not feed me. When I was in prison, you did not visit me. Showing the presence of Christ in every life. So intense that if we don't do this to one another, we are doing it or not doing it to Him. If I do something kind to you, I'm not doing it to you. I'm doing it to Him. It's to Him. And if we have not ministered to Him on that level, when it comes to the time of our judgment, He said, I don't know who you were. You didn't feed me when I was hungry. You didn't take care of me when I was sick. When did we see you hungry? When did we see you sick? What you've done to one another is what you've done to me. This challenges us. We're not just observers. We're not here in a theater listening to someone expound something. We're here being prepared to do the work of the kingdom. It's our responsibility. Do the work. You, me. I saw this writing from St. Vincent. And I wrote it out because I thought it was so challenging. It says, what is meant by deposit? That which is committed to thee, not that which is invented by thee, that which thou hast received, not that which thou hast devised, a thing not of wit, but of learning, not of private assumption, but of public tradition, a thing brought to thee, not brought forth from thee, wherein thou must not be an author, but a keeper, not a leader, but a follower. Keep the deposit. Preserve the talent of the Catholic faith, safe and undiminished. Let that which is committed to thee remain with thee, and that deliver. Thou hast received gold, render gold. How many times I've said to you, you have been given everything. You lack in nothing. To see someone lacking is to deny what we have if we don't help them. It's not just a matter, oh, I'm born again, I'm safe. No, that won't get you into heaven. What have you done with what I have given you? Scripture very clearly says we will not be judged by whether or not we are saved, because that was the work of Christ. When Christ died, everyone was born again. Everyone was born again. But what have you done with what you have been given? The gold of that. The gold of that. Are you giving that to others? Or are you condemning others? Are you gossiping about others to destroy them? Are you holding back when you could be giving? It's a real challenge to us. We have been given this deposit of life, new life. What are we doing with that deposit? It's not from us. It's nothing we can make. It's nothing we can author. It's nothing we can, whatever, we can't do it. It's a gift from God deposited in us. His very life in us. His very life in us. This is why he said, the things that I have done, you shall do. Why? Because you have my life. We are not weak. We are not weak. We are not ignorant. We are not wanting. We are blessed. But we must use it. We must use it for the glory of God. To fail to use it is to deny Christ in our life. That's a hard statement to say. But if we do not use it thinking, I can't, we are denying that Christ gave us everything we need. That we lack in nothing. Maybe I don't have the money, but I have the love. I have the compassion. I have other things that I can give. It isn't all based on finances. It's based on the love of God. The peace, the joy, the assurance, the confidence. We should be happy people. Amen. We should be a joyful people. There should be very little opportunity for things which are tempting to bring us down, to actually bring us down. When those things knock on our door, that's the time we scream the louder. My God never fails. Amen. My God never fails.
Amen.
Even though it may look like it's failure at the moment, just wait. The story's not over yet.
Amen.
Not done. Not done. We have hope in Him. And we have been given the opportunity to make it happen by our obedience. We can be either Lazarus or we can be the rich man. I don't care about being the rich man. Oh, I like nice things. I won't deny that. I like nice things. But I don't have to have them. I like special food. You ask Margie. I don't like leftovers. I'm like the rich man. I want something different every time I sit at the table. But there are times when I eat leftovers. And it's not her fault. After Friday, there was leftover vegetables. So what did I have Friday night to eat? Vegetables. I can do it. I don't have to demand, but I like it. But you don't let those things control you. Don't let it. Doesn't mean you can't have nice things, but it means they are not your God. Your God is Jesus Christ, and obedience to Him is your life. Without that obedience, there is no life. The enemy will tempt us on every side. He'll throw everything in our path to get us our eyes off of Him. But we have to get our glasses straightened out and make sure we got bifocals that are powerful enough to see through by X-ray vision into the principles that are thrown in our path. This doesn't belong to me. It's not mine. It's not mine. This is what God expects of us. We not only receive, but we give. He deposited in us everything. Everything is already deposited in us. Healing is there. It's there. Wisdom is there. It's all there. You need nothing. The world keeps telling us, oh, you got to do this so you can do this and do that. You got to get this education or that so you can do something. God has given to us everything we need. Doesn't mean we shouldn't get an education. Don't misunderstand. That education is not going to be the source of our life. The source of our life is Christ. And He's given to us the wisdom. One of the biggest foolish things we've seen in life here in this nation. I think 4 of the 5, or maybe all 5 of the rich tycoons never went to college. And yet they are the richest people in this nation. College didn't bring them wealth. God, using what God had given them, did it. And you have it. You have that. I have it. It's ours. If we will listen to Him. Now, we're not all meant to be tycoons. Some people are meant to be typhoons. But God has given to us everything we need. We must use it. Put it into action. We don't need anything more. We need to give what we have. And in giving, what happens? We receive. You get all the more by using what you've got. This is God's principle. Amen. Please stand.